Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a pretty exciting video and one I haven't done on this channel in a long time, and that is a wrap up of my favorite books that I read throughout the year. This video is my favorite reads of 2022. So let's dive in. I'm very excited about this video. So just to preface, this video is in no particular order because figuring out an order for these was just too much, because some of them I really love and some of them I love them all for such different reasons. So no particular order. So if I counted correctly, there should be 11 books on this list. There are just a couple that I don't own physically or I just didn't feel like finding. So there's that. First up on my list of favorite books for 2022 is Defend the Dawn by Bridget Kemmerer. This book was everything that I wanted it to be. It is the sequel to Defy the Night if you've never heard of it. Defy the Night is incredible. If you don't know who Bridget Kemmerer is, she is the author of the Cursebreakers trilogy. She wrote A Curse So Dark and Lonely, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, A Vow So Bold and Deadly, and this is a separate series that she wrote. But if you don't know what Defy the Night is, Defy the Night essentially is a Robin Hood retelling, would be the best way to put it. Essentially, the Kingdom of Kandala is under a bit of duress. The king and queen have been assassinated and the two sons are left to deal with a kingdom that is also dealing with an incredibly destructive and horrible illness. And the only way to cure this illness is with moonflower petals, and moonflower petals are extremely scarce. It is so well written. This book went in a completely different direction than I was expecting, but I loved it. And the payoff at the end of this book, plus the cliffhanger, I devoured this book. I read this book way too fast. I'm actually kind of mad at myself for reading it so fast because now I have to wait, obviously, for the next one to come out. And I always do that to myself. I always read books so fast and then it's over. Book 2 picks up right where book 1 leaves off, and that's all I'll say about Defend the Dawn without spoiling it for you. But this was definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. It was one of my first reads of the year actually as well. So Defend the Dawn. On the same note, this just happens to be the order they were stacked in, so like I said, no particular order, but my next favorite was Forging Silver into Stars, also by Bridget Kemmerer. Bridget Kemmerer is just one of my favorite authors of all time now. I don't think there's a book that she will write that I will not read, and Forging Silver into Stars was actually one of my most anticipated books for the year 2022, and when it came out, I immediately stopped everything I was doing to read this. Forging Silver into Stars is the start of a new, I believe, probably going to be another trilogy, and it takes place directly after the Cursebreakers trilogy. Now, I believe Bridget said that you can read this trilogy without reading Cursebreakers, but I personally think that it's spoilery because if you read this, certain characters are going to appear in this that appeared in the Cursebreaker trilogy, and then you'll know who survives and who doesn't, and I personally wouldn't recommend it, but she says you can, so feel free if you want to. But the Cursebreakers trilogy is phenomenal. It is one of my favorite trilogies of all time, and as I said, this follows characters from that. And if you didn't know, the Curse So Dark and Lonely trilogy essentially is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Very well done, original, cool, fresh take on Beauty and the Beast, which I love, and some of my favorite characters of all time have come from that. I don't want to say anything about Forging Silver into Stars in case you haven't read Cursebreakers. I don't want to spoil it, but I will say that what Bridget Kemmerer does so well is characters. The characters are just what you root for and what you come back for, but she's also so good at world building and political intrigue, and the plot keeps up with everything, and the romances are just to die for, and the characters are so memorable, and it's just such an immersive story. And this particularly is where we really get to see this world completely unfold, because the world is kind of built up in the Cursebreakers trilogy, and then you just get to live in it, in this world, and it's just so much bigger and more developed, and just it's so good. Please read this. The first 2 books I showed you, I don't have any sticky tabs in them, and you'll see that sticky tabs are a pretty good denotion of whether or not I liked a book, and the more sticky tabs a book has, the more I probably liked it. But for these particular books, I actually read the ARC versions of them, and the ARC versions are buried on my cart, so they're not available currently. The next book that I read this year that I absolutely devoured was another one that I was kind of expecting to really like, but not expecting to love as much as I did because it's not typically a genre I go for, but that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book, I knew I was going to like it. I knew I was going to be interested in it because if you don't know, it's supposed to be Kylo and Rey, and I love Reylo. If you don't know me, I love Reylo. I mean, behind me is Kylo Ren, so I'm actually very excited to continue reading Ali Hazelwood. I know she's got another couple of books out, or she has another book out and another one coming out. Either way, I'm very excited about this book. This book had everything I think I just love in general, which I think is another reason why I liked it. Number one, of course, Raylo. I do love fake dating. I'm a sucker for fake dating. Forced proximity is another thing that I love. I love it when a main character doesn't believe in love and then love kind of just happens to them. I'm hoping it'll happen to me like that one day, but aside from that, you know. As I said, I don't typically read romance. I want to get more into romance, so if you have any romance suggestions, let me know. I haven't read too much of it. I've also read, I think Olivia Dade is the author, but I devoured this. I absolutely loved this. I am very excited to see her other books and to get to her other books because I also believe that those are based on Star Wars characters as well. So that'll be super exciting. And also women in STEM. We love to see it. We need to see it. And I don't know, everybody needs an Adam Carlson in their life. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. The next book that I absolutely devoured this year, and this one I actually did sticky tab, so there's that. You'll get to see how much I devoured this book. But the next one that I absolutely devoured is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Look at all those sticky tabs. They're light colored, so it's kind of hard to see them. But there's so many sticky tabs in this book. I remember when this book was coming out, I was so excited because John Green doesn't write nearly as many books as he used to, and John Green was such a favorite of mine and such a fundamental part of my reading upbringing. He was an author I tended to grab when I was younger, and when I found out he was coming out with a nonfiction book, I was so intrigued because I love watching Vlogbrothers. I love watching John on YouTube and just getting to see him and his brother talk about really cool things, and this was one of those that I was like, I have to get my hands on. So if you don't know anything about this book, essentially it's a series of essays, and it started off on John's podcast where he would kind of just talk about just general things in life that he observes in our everyday world, and he would give it a rating. He goes into the history of even the 5-star rating and where that came about. Basically, he takes a story of something that has happened to him in his life and applies it to a subject and rates it on a 5-star rating. Some of these topics are just so amazing. He rates things on a 5-star scale such as velociraptors, Diet Dr. Pepper, teddy bears, sunsets, penguins of Madagascar, Super Mario Kart, Kentucky bluegrass, the mountain goats, the Notes app. This book blew me away because it's not just some of his stories, it's not just the 5-star rating, it's not just the out there topics, it's his take on them, and his viewpoint is just so hopeful. And looking at humanity through this lens is just so fascinating. And it really captivated me and really just expanded my mind and made me think a lot. The little tagline at the end that I really love says, John Green's gift for storytelling shines throughout this masterful collection. The Anthropocene Reviewed is an open-hearted exploration of all the paths we forge and unironic celebration of falling in love with the world. And that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like looking at things through such a unique lens, getting to understand a little bit of the backstory and also getting to understand maybe John's personal connection with it and being able to maybe view your own connection with it, and just getting to see how every little thing in our world impacts every other little thing. And so many of our small experiences that we've had growing up over the years have completely just shaped us and who we are and how we view the world, and like how it all comes together to paint this beautiful mosaic that is our world and that is humanity. And it's just so fascinating. I think one of my favorites in here is actually teddy bears, because he even goes into the history of why we call them teddy bears and how teddy bears came to be. But this blew me away. There are just so many quotes in here that I absolutely loved and devoured. And honestly, I would reread this again in a heartbeat. Okay, just for example, just to give you the vibes, listen to this quote. And it's also a statement that we are, that we exist. And it's a statement that we are here, that a series of astonishing unlikelihoods has made us possible and here possible. We might never know why we are here, but we can still proclaim in hope that we are here. I don't think such hope is foolish or idealistic or misguided. We live in hope that life will get better, and more importantly, that it will go on, that love will survive even though we will not. And between now and then, we are here because we are here. We're here because we are here. It's so good. So yeah, The Anthropocene Reviewed was another one that I was super excited for. It was on my most anticipated. And when I finally got to it, I blew through it. And actually, I read that one in an interesting format. I read along physically and then also listened to the audiobook through my library, because John Green narrated, and I think it added so much more depth and dimension as well, just listening to him narrate the book while I followed along. I loved it. I want to go back through it. I highly recommend it, so that was another one on my list. The next book on my list is something that people have been hearing me talk about incessantly, and I never seem to shut up about. I don't think I'll ever shut up about. It is now one of my all-time favorite books. I found out about it randomly because I subscribed to Book of the Month and it was one of the options for that month, and the plot just sounded amazing and captivating and so different, and I had to have it. So I picked it for my Book of the Month. I picked it up, and yeah, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. If you saw my last vlog, you saw I went through this as well, but all of my sticky tabs I put in a rainbow to match the colors on the cover, and this book blew me away. I think that honestly I will read anything that Gabrielle puts out for the rest of my life because the writing in this was just so captivating. So if you don't know anything about this book, it follows two characters, Sam and Sadie, and Sam and Sadie were best friends growing up. They were very, very close, and along the way, their paths diverged, they got separated, they lost touch, they had a falling out, and they end up meeting by chance when they're both in college. Their paths cross at a train station or a subway, I believe. When their paths cross and they reconnect, the two of them decide to start a journey on a collaboration that will last them a long, long time. This collaboration is building a video game. And what's so special and unique about this is the fact that it takes place over so many years of their life, and the fact that Sam and Sadie are never romantically involved, and delving into the idea of having a creative partnership with someone, and how having a creative partnership with someone can almost be more intimate than an actual romantic relationship, and the highs and the lows and the pitfalls and the different things that happen over years and years and years of having a relationship like that, especially when your game becomes the biggest selling game pretty much of all time. It is incredible. It's heart-wrenching. It is just such a really fascinating way to look at friendship and to just get to watch their story unfold over the years. This story will stick with me for so long. Whether you love video games or not, this is definitely something I highly recommend. And if you love video games, I even more so recommend it because it's just so cool to get to see the behind the scenes of building games and coming up with the concepts. But at its core, it is a story of creative collaboration and the tribulations that go along with that kind of pursuit and that kind of relationship. It is so good. I'm going to read you the little blurb at the bottom because it will just say it in a way that I cannot. Spanning 30 years from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Venice Beach, California, and lands in between and far beyond, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is a dazzling and intricately imagined novel that examines the multifarious nature of identity, disability, failure, and the redemptive possibilities in play, and above all, our need to connect, to be loved, and to love. Yes, it is a love story, but it is not one you have read before. If I could recommend you any book to read from this list, and trust me, I loved all these books, this is the one. This is the one. This book took me out. The amount of sticky tabs in this book is ridiculous. It's so good. The next book that kind of took me by surprise this year was something that's been on my TBR for a while, and I just randomly decided to pick it up a couple of months ago or a month ago, and it blew me away. I am so happy that it's going to be part of a series because when the conclusion of this book came around, I was not ready to say goodbye. That book is The Liar's Crown by Abigail Owen. This book, first of all, the cover. The little tagline says, "One born to rule and one to forfeit." So this book follows two princesses. They are twins. The older one is who they deem to be in line for the throne, who will eventually become the queen. The second is basically non-existent. No one in the kingdom knows that this princess exists. No one knows that they were born twins. Nobody has any idea. And her entire purpose is that she will fill in for her sister if there's ever anything of any danger. That way, if anything happens to the second sister, there is still a queen on the throne. Essentially, the second sister is filling in for the queen, and she gets kidnapped. She gets kidnapped by a shadow wraith, and it is her entire mission to get back to the castle because she learns that there is a plot unfolding to harm her sister and to kill her sister. Along the way, the Shadow Wraith unravels some secrets and some other things, and there may be a romance with the Shadow Wraith, so it's really good. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I thought it was going to be cornier than it was. It wasn't. The plot was really quick, which was great. It kept me engaged. I loved the romance in this. I had a couple of moments where I was surprised when things happened, so it was definitely good for me, and I am just pleased that there's going to be a sequel, because when it ended, I was not ready to say goodbye. I read this book so fast too. I actually wish that I was able to slow down and enjoy it a little bit more, but it's besides the point. I did really enjoy this book though. The next book on my list was also one of the first books I read this year. It was a book that I read for book club, and it's a book that I've kind of been talking about throughout all of my vlogs through this year, so you might be able to guess what it is. That book is Gilded by Marissa Meyer. I devoured this book. This book was so good. It was so dark. At its core, essentially, it is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. It is quite possibly one of my favorite books of all time. Cursed has recently come out, and I have not read Cursed yet because I'm going to be buddy reading it with somebody, and it's killing me because all I want to do is read Cursed. Like, it has been staring at me for 2 months. All I want to do is read Cursed. Gilded is everything that I wanted and more. It is so dark and unapologetic, and the twists and the turns that happen in this book, you'll never see coming. You'll never see coming. Just to give you a little bit about the book. Long ago, cursed by the god of lies, a miller's daughter has developed a talent for spinning stories that are fantastical and spellbinding and entirely untrue. Or so everyone believes. When one of Serilda's outlandish tales draws the attention of the sinister Earl King and his undead hunters, she finds herself swept away into a grim world where ghouls and phantoms prowl the earth and hollow-eyed ravens track her every move. The king orders Serilda to complete the impossible task of spinning straw into gold, or be killed for telling falsehoods. In her desperation, Serilda unwittingly summons a mysterious boy to her aid. He agrees to help her for a price. Soon, Serilda realizes that there is more than one secret hidden in the castle walls, including an ancient curse that must be broken if she hopes to end the tyranny of the king and his wild hunt forever. I'm telling you, there are so many twists and turns and shocking moments in this, and I have so many theories for book 2. I am beyond ready to be destroyed emotionally. I don't know if it's a duology or if it's going to be a series, but I'm going to tell you right now, this is it. Cursed was my, like, one of my most anticipated books for the year. Like, it was so high up there. It was so good. It was so good. Next on my favorite books of the year was another one that I had been meaning to get to forever, and it had been sitting on my shelf forever, and it took me by complete surprise. That book is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This follows directly after the A Court of Thorns and Roses. Not directly, but pretty close after the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This book, I won't tell you who it follows just in case you haven't read it and don't want to be spoiled, but ultimately A Court of Thorns and Roses is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Can you tell that I like retellings? Because I do. This takes place after that trilogy, and you can probably see just how much I liked it. There are so many sticky tabs in this book. This book is huge. It is like over 700 pages, and I devoured this book. I couldn't put this book down. I was so in love and entranced, and honestly, I am now finally working my way through the Throne of Glass series, so I now at least have that. But my favorite Sarah J. Maas book for the longest time was A Court of Mist and Fury, and this is my favorite Sarah J. Maas book. This is one of those books I think I'm going to try and read once a year because it just spoke to me. Next book on my list is quite different than the rest of them. I've been trying to expand into different genres and expand into different types of books. You know, I did read a little bit of romance this year. I did read some adult books this year, and this one is adult and it's magical realism, and this is actually a reread technically. I read this book in high school, I want to say, but that was so long ago, and I remember really loving it, and I was in such a mood to pick it back up, and I think reading this as an adult with fresh eyes was just so, pun intended, pun not intended, either way, magical. Because it's magical realism, you know? Anyway, the book is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende, And I love Isabel Allende's writing. I actually just bought another book of hers that just came out, and I can't wait to read it because her writing is just so good. So essentially this book follows 3 generations of a family, and in that family it follows Esteban and Clara. Esteban is a very volatile, angry, power-hungry, politically power-hungry man, and all he wants to do is just win and succeed and have everything. And he meets Clara, and Clara is an unusual sort of girl. She has a connection with the spirit world, and for everything that Esteban hates, he only has love for Clara. He loves her. He will do anything for her. He will build things for her. He will give her the world. He will lay the world at her feet. And Esteban and Clara have a daughter named Blanca, and Blanca, when she gets older, because we follow the family over multiple generations, when Blanca gets older, she falls in love with someone that Esteban disapproves of, and she begins a forbidden romance with this person, and it's against her father's will, and ultimately she ends up getting pregnant and has her daughter Alba. And Alba may just be the key to breaking the generational curses of her family. It is so good. It is so good. And to just get to see all the storylines weave throughout the generations, and to just get to see them overlap and get to see where the curses are kind of taking place over the generations and kind of see how they come about full circle. It is so, so good. As I said, it's a story that spans decades and decades of this family's life. It is not only about politics, but it's about love, and it's about magic, and it's about fate, and kind of what is fate and what do we make of fate, if that makes sense. It's kind of one of those really beautiful lenses of looking at, is everything fated, or do I have control over my own fate? And it's so well done. It's so beautiful. I'm so glad I read it again, and honestly I'm so excited to get to Isabel Allende's next book that I picked up. I forget what it's called, but it has a green cover. I'll pop it in the video if I remember. So editing Danielle, put this in the video. This is the next book that I'm very excited about. I want to say Violetta or Violetta. Either way, here it is. The next book on my list of favorite books that I read this year, I couldn't find. It's somewhere on one of my carts, so it's over there, and I didn't want to dig through all of them. So the next book that I loved this year was Daughter of Shattered Skies by Sarah de Laverne, and this book was another one that kind of was just very unexpected for me. Sarah reached out and asked me if I wanted to read her book, and the cover was beautiful and seemed so intriguing, and I was like, yes. And I'm a sucker for royalty. I really love royalty. I mean, you can probably see a little bit of that in some of these books from this year. But essentially, Daughter of Shattered Skies, the plot summary: before the timeline divided Eloise between day and night, the imperial emperor and empress ruled justly and with great love for all kingdoms in their realm. Under eternal night skies, imperial princess Isaria Elisato is reared by her only remaining family. With Aunt Kate's guidance, Isaria is urged toward conquest of the daylight cities responsible for the regicide, but she cannot help to wonder if the curse meant to protect her was not the very thing her parents banished long ago. And Isaria tests the restrictions set forth by the Empress Regent. It becomes obvious that there is more to her than the magic she realized. Something strange lurks within, making her powers unstable. As she approaches her 18th birthday, it speaks to her promises more than vengeance. North of the timeline, Prince Calix prepared to inherit the Hin Hollow from his warlord father on one condition. He must eliminate the growing threat of the imperial princess before she can receive her crown from the Evernight Witch and unleash darkness upon the rest of Eloris. Worlds collide, and Isaria is forced to flee across the continent with deadly foes on the horizon. Isaria is left with no options and less time. She must find the origin of all magic, the fabled Vera Callum, and awaken her powers before she loses herself entirely. So some of you know I'm a huge fan of not only fantasy, but I'm a huge fan of fantasy with royalty, which you can kind of tell by some of the books that are on this list that I've talked about today. But Daughter of Shattered Skies is incredible. It's extremely action-packed. It is unlike anything I think I've read before in terms of plot and plot points. It's very unique and original. And what Sarah does really well is her world building. This book is so action-packed, and it's laced with magic, betrayal, secrets, power. It is just so enticing. And what I also really love about it is that it is a good mixture of romance and political intrigue, and it just has an incredible cast of characters. I can't say much more than that. I implore you to pick it up. It is a very quick read, but it's definitely something that I'm hoping there will be more. Sarah took me by storm this year. I had never read her writing before, but her writing is phenomenal and I miss the characters. It's been a while. When did I read this book? I read this book in March. And I miss it already. I mean, it's been a while, but I miss the characters. I hope there's another one. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Still grateful Sarah sent it to me, and still thinking about it, to be honest. The final book on my favorites for 2022 is definitely not least. It is one of my favorites. It's something I kind of picked up because I did hear some hype about it, but also the cover was just so pretty, and yet I still don't own it. So I need to rectify that because I loved it so much. Why don't I own it? That book is Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Bashardos. As I said, this book completely blew me away. Again, royalty, princess, curses. It had everything that I love. I think that my favorite genre, to be honest, is royalty. I'm learning this about myself. I knew this about myself, but I'm just continuing to just acknowledge and accept it. So anyway, this book follows Soraya. And Soraya is a princess who is cursed. She is cursed to be poisoned by the touch, so if anyone touches her, they die. And that is something similar to another series I very much loved, which was the Shadow Me series. But Soraya is just so strong-willed, and she was a breath of fresh air to read about. It follows her right before her brother's wedding. She typically lives her life in the shadows. She doesn't come out. She's not somebody who is ever really seen because obviously if you're going to touch someone and kill them, you don't probably want to be around. And she, right before her brother's wedding, she decides that maybe it's time to step out of the shadows, and she goes to the dungeons to seek the help of a demon who could potentially help her break her curse. Her choices have some pretty intense consequences, and she has to decide between becoming human or demon, princess or monster. It's so good. I think that there's only one. Yeah, it's a standalone book, so if you're interested in picking it up, it's a very quick read and it's a very easy read, and it doesn't involve too much commitment, which we love because sometimes series are fun because you can get lost in them, but sometimes series are daunting and overwhelming because there's just so much of a commitment. So if you're looking for a good standalone, Girl, Serpent, Thorn was definitely one of my faves this year. And now, again, that I'm thinking about it, I really do need to get a copy because I loved that book and I don't own it. But yeah, those were my favorite books of 2022. I hope that there were some on there that you recognize, some that you didn't. You'll have to let me know what you think of this list, if there are any that you agree with me on, any books that you're excited to read, and let me know what books ended up on your favorites for the year because I would love to add some more books to my 2023 TBR, so please do that. Leave some below. Also, if my descriptions of these books enticed you and you want to learn more about a book, or if my descriptions were terrible and you want to learn more about a book, I'm going to link all of these books down below so that you can just click on the link and see what the book's about and decide if you want to read it or learn more. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a happy new year, and I hope that you read all the amazing books in 2023. And I will see you with my next video next year. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye guys!